in, and each different act or statement in any transaction affects or may affect whether any procedure or idea discussed in these sessions is relevant to the recipient's transactions or that the outcome thereof will be depicted as in these sessions. The discussion of ideas or procedures in these sessions is not exhaustive of the subjects being discussed. Many ideas and concepts that can affect the outcome of any legal or commercial procedure are not discussed in these sessions, and the fact that the recipients may not be aware of these issues may have an adverse effect on the outcome of the recipient's procedures. It is the responsibility of the recipients to understand their own transactions and to apply the appropriate and complete concepts necessary for a procedural and substantive remedy thereto. These sessions may be redistributed privately by any recipient to another recipient requesting them, conditioned upon the fact that this notice is provided therewith. If you have any questions, you may contact the Commerce Coach by email at info@thecommercecoach.com.
I think the important thing you saw is that these things in court can get a little vociferous. Let's do a couple little ones with... Let's get a participant from out here. Give me somebody. Come on up here, young lady. Yeah, you. Come on. You know, it's going to be embarrassing, I know. Come on up here, Al, also. AJ, come on. You're going to be the judge. Now, this is going to be good practice for you. You heard some stuff. All you're looking for is a controversy, right? That's all we want to do, is create a controversy with this person. How you're going to be representing the defendant. And Lena, get over here. You're going to be the prosecutor. Now, come on, you all can fit into this easy. Benny, you go help. You go help our brother there. Smith, you got to help Lena a little bit, and I'll help the judge. So we'll do this. And let's see how you do.
Okay, so we're the prosecutor. Cool.
Okay.
We just got to lay the charges on that.
The case is called, and of course, we just called the case, and Lena stood up and said she's here for the United States. And on behalf of the United States, Lena Believa on behalf of the United States. And I guess we better hope that Al says something pretty quick, because we're going to ask if Al is in the courtroom.
Is Al in the courtroom?
Don't tell him nothing yet, Ben. He's got to man up.
Hello?
Tell him to get his ass in the bar.
Your Honor,
I'm here for in that manner.
In what manner is that?
In the manner of Al.
Are you Al?
Are you Al?
I'm here in that manner. I'm a third-party creditor.
Are you Al?
I'm here in that manner. I'm here for that matter to represent.
Al, will you
Well, if he
forward?
says he's here to represent him, then he must be an attorney. Better ask him if he's an attorney.
Are you an attorney?
Represent means to bring before the public. You want to represent you or anybody? The only one that can bring anybody before the public is an attorney. So he just said, I'm here to represent him.
I'm here to resolve this matter.
And how do you propose to do that?
And how do you propose to do that?
Are you Al or not?
Are you Al or not?
Are you an attorney for Al?
I accept your offer on proof of claim. I'm not the accommodation party. Appearing specially, not generally.
Tell him to please come on in
Merely
the bar.
for the moving party.
Please
so we
come
can
on
hear
in the
him.
bar so we can hear you.
Merely to
Why don't we turn this over to his co-counsel and let him roll with
I
it a
think that
little?
would be better.
You stay right there, and you coach him. All right, Judge, we got ourselves a live... Judge, we got a live one here.
Yes.
So what do you think, Mr. Prosecutor? Is Benton in the courtroom?
you know, I would tell him this is a serious case. Rare albino squirrels have been hunted out of season, and they're federally protected. This is a bad one.
This is a
a serious matter, and you have to. No, I don't have to. You know.
All righty. Let's get him in the bar. See if you can talk him into it. Is he the defendant or isn't he? Or is your name Benton Hall or isn't it?
Is your name Benton Hall or isn't it? Please.
Your Honor, I conditionally accept these proceedings on proof of claim. I'm not here today as the accommodation party, appearing specially, not generally, merely for the moving party to produce any unresolved, genuine or original charging or accusatory instrument for my inspection. And on behalf of the defendant, forgive me.
Oh, you're representing the attorney? You're representing the defendant now?
You're representing the defendant now?
I conditionally accept your offer on proof of claim. I'm not the accommodation party, merely here to resolve this matter. And for the moving party to produce any unresolved charging or accusatory instrument for my inspection so that said matter can be resolved immediately so as to save valuable public resources as well as valuable private resources.
Please just come into the bar, please.
Will you please just come into the bar?
So we can hear.
How serious this is. They can't accommodate the murder of these squirrels.
This is a serious matter.
Why is it serious? You got to take this serious. They'll come at this. This is a real serious matter. You can't accommodate the killing of the rare white squirrel. And he's done 2 of them.
In the country.
He's done 2 of the 4.
Defendant now got me in some trouble.
We don't even know if we have a pair left.
The goal here, Judge, is to create a controversy. Get this guy to make statements, do something, but I don't want to talk about he's here for some charging instrument. Cotton picker got charged, and he doggone well better know it.
Please come into the bench.
Well, I'd be more than happy to come into the bench, or across the bench, and into the bar.
Come up to the bench, please.
I'd be more than happy.
Well, look at that, Mr. Prosecutor. I invited him into a private hearing up at the bench, and he didn't want to come in.
Come in.
I didn't ask him to come in the bar. I told him to approach the bench. Where is it private, ladies and gentlemen? Oops, things changed. Looks like we got one. We got a live one, Judge. We're going to kick his ass.
Get her done.
I said, come on up to the bench. That's the private side.
I'd be more than happy to come into your chambers so long as it's as previously stated.
I'd be happy to approach the bench so long as to help resolve the matter. Well, get your ass up here then.
As previously stated, and so long as I'm reserving all my rights, privileges, and remedies.
All your constitutional rights are reserved, sir.
All your constitutional rights are reserved, sir.
And I conditionally accept your offer on proof of claim. It's not the defendant that has constitutional rights. I'm not here today, as previously stated, as the accommodation party, and that I'm not entering said bar. And let the record show that I'm entering under said terms and conditions, reserving all my rights, privileges, and remedies, and that for the moving party produce any genuine or original charging or accusatory instrument for my inspection so that I can resolve this matter now.
A little close.
Now, Judge, we're in private here. Let's resolve this.
That's as close to the bar you're getting. Now, he said, who has constitutional rights? Debtors. What kind of rights do you have? You have unalienable God-given rights. If God gave them to you, who can take them away? If it is just God, and he ain't here, he's not going to do it. So we invited him to the bench. Mr. Prosecutor, Lena, could you please approach the bench?
I'll have to come with you.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, we got a private hearing now. Now we have one of these. Our friend Brandy's been in some of these, and so have some others. So we now have ourselves a confab, so we got to get these 2 going.
Okay.
Like, what do you got to say? What do you got to say?
Okay, what do you have to say?
Okay, that's you, Lena.
He's asked for the charging accusatory instrument. What do you got to say about that?
Serious. We got to.
Now, you need to create a controversy here. Just like ignore that and say he frickin' killed him.
You have to stop
The squirrel.
the squirrel murders here.
What do you have to say?
I conditionally accept that offer on proof of claim that squirrel murders haven't stopped as of today. And on proof of claim, any moving party has produced a genuine or original charging or accusatory instrument so that I can resolve this matter now.
He's got copies.
What do you have to say?
You have copies of the charges,
And that's not going to bring back the dead squirrels.
and it's not going to bring back.
Where are those
dead
copies?
squirrels.
Grab those copies. Did you get a copy of those over to him? Here. Matter of fact, we have a copy right here, don't we, Judge? I'm your assistant.
Yes.
Give the defendant his copy.
Here, defendant.
I conditionally accept your offer on proof of claim. This isn't merely a counterfeit of the original, and therefore denying my right to provide the remedy. And for the moving party,
You know the good thing we got going here, Judge? The really good thing is this guy missed the fact we called him the defendant. He didn't rebut that. We're doing pretty good because he missed that. He wants to talk about the instrument and argue. As far as I'm concerned, that's real. Since he's a defendant, that's all he's entitled to. He didn't rebut that I called him the defendant, did he?
No, he did not.
And remember, that's one of the things we teach. They've got to identify you or get you to identify as being the defendant. So we're going to say, defendant, you've received a copy, and if you don't, here's another copy. And he took it. And then he says, I conditionally accept. Well, you going to refuse it?
Testing.
conditionally accept your offer on proof of claim that you've switched that out with the that
You're going to refuse it? You didn't even check it. You didn't even check it for an original. He didn't look at the signature line. How does he know? What is honor? To accept willingly and pay when due. Well, accept it. Let's go to the signature line and see if we've got a blue ink signature. It's merely a copy. I might have said, well, I got a copy right here for you. And take it and... First of all, I conditionally accept on proof of claim that I'm not here in the capacity and for the purpose previously stated. Yes?
You know, they're making copies so good, it's so difficult sometimes to see whether a genuine charge means...
They're making copies so good, it's difficult to see. No, it isn't, because they're not going to give you a blue ink copy. They're going to give you a black ink signature on the signature line. You're going to know it's a copy. And you're going to know when you've got the original. You're going to see a blue ink signature, something that seals or something that's going to let you know it's the original. You must refute or rebut. It's said thusly. It's called prima facie evidence. Prima facie is at first glance, a simulacrum. So here's what you've got going. When I say that, here, let's give a copy of this to the defendant, and I hand it to the defendant, take it. You better accept it. You got to be this one because he can't cut it. He's going to take a moment. He's in no hurry. It was given to him. Going to go to the back page. It's a copy. I conditionally accept your offer on proof of claim that I'm not here in the capacity and for the purpose previously stated, rather than you identifying me as the defendant, or on proof of claim you can identify the accused party, and on proof of claim I'm not here in the capacity and for the purpose previously stated, and accept for value, return for value your copy on proof of claim that the original is either lost or in the power of the opposite party, or on proof of claim that failing to give me the original doesn't constitute an obstruction of justice, due process, and protection under the law, right? And hand it back. Now we got a problem. Well, prosecutor, what do you got to say?
Okay, he's just a defendant, Your Honor. He's got notice of exactly what the charges are against him, and he can answer based on the documentation he has.
Any reason you can't answer based on this documentation, sir?
I conditionally accept the offer on proof of claim it's not a counterfeit of the original, therefore denying my right to the remedy, and that my business, the defendant's business, isn't concluded here today, and that I'll be leaving. Have a nice day.
For failing to state a claim upon which relief can be granted.
But, Your Honor, it's a certified copy. It's not a counterfeit.
What do you say?
Nice, because the judge don't want to get in the middle of this brew. We're up in a private thing. He's going to go pretty easy. Public, see, in the private, there's going to be different negotiation. In the public, the judge is charged with upholding public policy. Remember what I said contracting was? It wasn't merely the study of rules. The rule says, do a conditional acceptance. You've got to understand underlying policy. In the public, everything must be construed to comply with statutes, even if the statutes are wrong. The Communist society, the democracy must be fed. And it doesn't matter. Whatever it takes. Statutes, nothing means anything. You are to be ruled against unless it serves the purpose to give you a win or shield the game or something. That's all it is. Underlying policy. And in the public, underlying policy says, we are right and nothing you say matters. No argument you can put up makes a hill of beans. No statute you quote. I don't care about my statutes. I'm here to win this game, and under public policy is that. Then you better understand legal philosophy, legal process, and historical perspective. Why corporations are reined in, why this happens. These books, this contract book, Brian Blum gives you that. You cannot play chess effectively against an expert unless you understand the underlying concepts and principles that underlie a chess game. Developing pieces and that kind of thing. Anybody you play in chess that brings their queen out in the beginning is an amateur. That's just a hard, fast rule. Because they run around, I'm developing my pieces, slamming your queen all over the board. You don't get any development, and then you get so far behind you can't develop. Unless you're Fischer or Spassky and you got a capability of what you're doing is doing something really deep, which is to sacrifice 4 major pieces before you have checkmate the guy, you know? So the long and the short is, understand contracting, because that's all this is. We're up here in the private, and that's a whole lot different than if they're now stepped out in the public. Because I'm not going to be going pretty much like, what do you got to say, what do you got to say? I might do it on a traffic situation or a small little insignificant left-hand turn light deal. But on a major criminal case, IRS or something, don't count on it. Yes, a question?
Ben was able to say, I conditionally accept. That is conditionally accept or something.
Well, he separated, Benny, what he was doing, I conditionally accept on proof of claim that the defendant is in charge. If I said, you've been charged here, here's a copy. First of all, I conditionally accept on proof of claim that you can identify the accused party. On proof of claim, your conduct doesn't constitute barratry. On proof of claim, I'm not here. And why do we say upon proof of claim? You must put the burden of proof on the other party. You've got to switch the burden of proof. In law, in this game, you cannot prove anything. You can't prove the sun's going to come up. What's your question? Well, come set up. Yo.
You said you gave him a copy. By definition, it's not the original.
Yes, I gave him a copy. I'm trying to snow him because he's the bank. Can he cash a copy of a check? Well, how about a certified copy?
No.
How about a triple certified copy? I've got an original certified copy right here. It's like cool. You know, they offer that, and people, oh, original, and they forget. He says original certified copy. No such thing as an original copy. What is that? A what?
Oxymoron.
Oxymoron. Original copy. I love it when they offer oxymorons. You a sovereign citizen? I got an original copy here for you.
Wait, what?
Right. What? Now you notice Benny came in, he wants the original charge and accusatory instrument. You notice our prosecutor, what was he doing? He just keeps saying he killed the squirrels. Nothing can be done to bring back the rare white albino squirrel of the Himalayan Cleveland location on Elyria, Ohio, you know. It's all I've got to do, all my judges got to do is create a controversy, and I get jurisdiction. All I need is this person, this individual, to give me an argument. We've got a client right now that's in prison. He's coming up to sentencing. We spoke with him this morning. What do you got to say at the sentencing? Well, I conditionally accept on proof of claim that the private set-off settled, the private paperwork hasn't, that this matter hasn't already been set off, settled, and closed. We got an argument. Benny came in, he said, look, give me the charging or accusatory instrument. I mean the original. I got a copy right here for you. That's what they always do. They confess and avoid. It's like so easy to see once you expect it. Because that's exactly what's going to happen. Confession and avoidance. every time. They're going to confess by not addressing your issue and avoid by bringing something else up and throwing the hook out there and see if you bite. But all he has to do is stick on his mantra. Do you or do you not? Now, we had our 2 doctors. Remember those, Jack? Our 2 doctors in 2009, December 11th, 2009, were in court after 6 months of paperwork and a pile that deep. They came in and said, look, we're here today merely blah, 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 appearing specially, not generally, to receive and show cause why somebody shouldn't present the original charge and accusatory instrument. The judge came off with, blah, 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 da, 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 this is a pretrial status. I don't care what he said. And they said, let the record show. No party here stated any claim upon which relief can be granted. For the second and final time, do you or anyone else here now today have an original charging or accusatory instrument? I mean a claim for my inspection. I mean for my execution. I mean a check for me to cash for you. Do you see? When you hear the word law, think contract. When we're talking about a claim, I'm talking about give me the check. Give me the check. I'm at the hotel. I ate at the restaurant. Give me the check so I can sign my name to it and pay it. Or discharge it, actually. All right?
Isn't the restaurant bill called the check? And what are they looking for? Payment? What you do when you give them Federal Reserve notes, isn't Federal Reserve notes a legal tender for all debts, public and private? So when they give you the check, you cash the check by giving them public currency. You could cash the check by endorsing it, authorizing them to go get the private currency, but you don't. Well, wait a minute. Let's say you're staying at this hotel this weekend, right? And you go into their restaurant for dinner. And they deliver the check when you are done with your dinner. Then, don't you merely sign your name and put your room number on the check and hand it back to them and walk out? Isn't there an account set up with the hotel so that your name is your authority to put the items on that account, which is your room number with the hotel? And they consider the debt paid. Now, when you check out of the hotel, they may bring you another check and see how you're going to pay that. And you can either put it on the public side or on the private side. It's up to you.
Tell me, Smith, when I put my name on the check, I mean the endorsement on the back of the indictment or charging instrument, is that going to be the end of it, or am I probably going to get some more?
There'll be some tests, but look.
Now, should we not get a certified copy of that front and back?
Maybe, but you see, when they bring you that checkout check or something, sometimes you're signing your name to the front of it, and that's the public side, isn't it? Well, when you sign your name to the front of it, isn't that exactly what you're doing when you're making your promissory note out to the bank in terms of the loan for your house? And your problem when you sign the front, that's okay, you can be the drawer. But without also endorsing the back, they can't get the currency out of the account. So you're going to have to endorse the back, too. Endorse the back. IN.
Let me ask you, Smith, are we not recommending that we should probably get, if we're at the clerk? You know, an interesting thought is we've had a lot of people recently go in requesting to inspect the file on criminal charges and civil lawsuits. Other than the feds, you're going to be able to probably re-inspect the file. You're going to find the original charging, accusatory instrument, complaint, civil suit. You're going to get an endorsement on the back of that. You need to ask for an original charging or accusatory instrument. Haven't we had some cool stories lately? You want to reiterate a couple of them?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, part of the problem when you're in federal court is there are no originals anymore.
Hey, Jack, give.
We ready to go?
We are.
Let's go.
What a discovery. That same feeling of wonder.
Okay. Ready?
We're going to do a little bit of live
It's
stuff.
where you find Bible study tools custom fit for you. Whether you're a beginner or advanced, there's something just for you. Flexible study plans and online help empower you to study the Bible at your own pace, at Bible study skills. If you'd like to understand how the Bible fits together, go to BibleDiscovery.org. No limitations, no deadlines. We've thought of everything, including a free sample lesson and printer-friendly courses so you don't have to work online. It's all at BibleDiscovery.org. Start mixing it up today at BibleDiscovery.org.
Greetings and welcome to Higher Ground Live. I'm your host, Pastor Massad, bringing you greetings this 24th day of August, 2012, not from our usual location, but live from Scottsdale, Arizona, from the Gordon Hall, Jack Smith, Brandon Adams Conference on Contract and Commerce. Gordon, you've done a great job here. We got 100 of our closest friends from all over the country visiting.
That we do, Pastor.
Jack, it's good to see you and be with you broadcasting live again. How are you?
Thank you, Pastor. It's my pleasure.
We're going to bring Brandon up here in a minute. And it's good to be here in Scottsdale. Amen. This is a really great crowd. You know, I'm very impressed with some of the stories I've heard already. We've had a chance to meet Dr. Don live, who's been on our show, and so many other people. And I'm really impressed with the level of proficiency in a lot of the people here in this room. I'm listening to the questions, I'm watching the conversations, and I know they didn't learn it all from just you guys. These people have been around for a while.
That they have. You know, there's lots of people teaching good things out there.
And I've had a chance to meet some other people before. We got a real hero from Alaska, and I've been up there a couple of times, and it's quite a place, and it's really good to see people all over the country learning things, and I'm listening to some of the things that you guys are talking about. And I'm pretty impressed, and I've had some questions. Talk a little bit, if you will, Jack, about the accommodation party. I want to hear about the accommodation party a little bit. I want you to explain that in detail, because people need to understand some of the depth of some of these things. I hear you talk about them, and I know a lot of the people here in the room probably do know what an accommodation party is, but some probably don't. And I know our listeners have heard the term, but let's take a minute and explain it, nuts and bolts.
Yeah, technically, under the Uniform Commercial Code, an accommodation party is defined in UCC 3-419. An accommodation party is someone that's willing to go out and pay another party's debt. He's not paying off his own debt. He's like a good Samaritan. And so he just goes out and randomly, if he tends to like someone that's got a debt or a liability out there, he decides he's going to pay it off for him. So in essence, he's kind of spiritually like a Christ who came down to planet Earth, and sin is interpreted as a debt. And when Christ came down, he decided it was his job and duty just to be an accommodation party and pay off the sin debt of all men. Well, we are understanding in learning commercial process that our straw man, or the entity that we go through life with, that name, that's all capital letter, that happens to have licenses and business licenses and bank accounts and checking accounts. He happens to be the one that's got the diploma from high school, happens to be the one that holds the driver's license issued by the state. That guy is viewed in the public as being a debtor since 1933. All he has to pay his debts with are promises to pay, which are more evidence of a debt. So in essence, this public persona of everyone, these straw men, have no chance in life, in commerce, to pay off anything except replace one debt with another. Hence, we find out that we have actually got, as a living man or a woman, the capacity to play a different role. Not the role of your straw man who is viewed as a debtor, but you can play the role of someone that can go out and actually have an asset account that can be used to pay off the debts of either your straw man or the debts of anybody else's straw man. So that if you happen to find yourself in a tax problem or in a credit card problem or in a foreclosure problem or a traffic ticket, whatever the debt is in public, if you happen to know a good accommodation party, that might just step up to the plate and take care of your problem for you.
That's the best explanation I have ever heard you give for accommodation party, and it didn't take 3 days. Uh-oh, some people in the room know about you, Jack.
I could give you the long version.
No, that's all right. That's okay. Thank you. I want to bring Brandon in. It's good to have you back with us. And come on, I've saved this chair for you.
Oh, well, thank you.
Now, Brandon, you've been talking about some interesting things, too, and I want to kind of open up the floor to a bunch of things, and then we can go in depth and take some different directions as we go on here. And what I'd like to do over the course of the next couple of days, because we'll broadcast a couple more shows here, is I want to get a chance, if it's okay with you, to have some of the people who I've been listening to come up and share some of their stories, because there's some great stories of the victories that people are having because they're paying attention to the fact that everything is contract. You good with that?
We're good with it.
Amen. So we'll get into some of the stories. I'll talk to some of you privately, but I'm listening to some good stories. But you talked about something. You talked about trust, and I learned 100 years ago from Jack all about trust and have really enjoyed them for a long time. You talked about actually using a trust to create your own currency. You said that. I don't know if you meant to say it or not, but I heard it, so I want to ask you about that. I want you to talk about that for a little bit, and we'll see where else we go from there.
Okay, well, a trust, and specifically the trusts I'm talking about are express trusts under the common law, private contract trust.
Okay.
And
I've never heard them call an express trust before. I've heard private, I've heard all kinds of different terms, but I've never heard express. Where do you get the word express from? Why do you call it that?
Merely because it's actually expressed in the form of indentures. It's not an implied.
Don't all trusts have indentures, or they're not a trust?
No, a trust can be created through implication.
What's an indenture?
It's a written memorialization of the contract.
Ah, contract.
Yeah,
okay, yeah, layman's understanding contract. I just want to clarify that. I was a little unsure myself.
You're good.
I think he was trying to trap you, Pastor.
Yeah, it didn't work, though. You've taught me well, Jack.
No, that's a lot of people you may not understand, but indenture is the contract that creates the trust. It's the written agreement that gives evidence that that trust exists. So they call it an indenture, and a layman would be a contract.
But I did hear you say something, Brandon. You referred to the trust as an entity, when in reality it's really a contract, not an entity.
Well, it's a contract that creates an entity. Because
Jack, would you say that? Would you say that I remember from years ago you teaching. I remember where I heard you teach me that. It was in Charlie's jet heading back to Ohio, and I remember saying it was an entity, and you said no, it's a contract.
Well, technically speaking, it is a contract, and there are parties involved in it, but it's not really looked upon as a legal entity except through the trustee in his capacity. For instance, we've had this problem in Ohio and probably other states where you're trying to record titles to real estate. And the county wants to see the title held in the name like Jack Smith, trustee for ABC Trust.
Correct.
And if you put it ABC Trust, Jack Smith, they'll come, no, we can't hold it in our records that way because there is nothing really registered as ABC Trust. The trustee has the power. And so we need a legal person to go to with regard to this contract. So they tend to put everything on the trustee as opposed to an entity like a trust.
Okay.
It is operating in that capacity.
It is operating as an entity, but in reality, yes or no, would you say it is an entity or it is not?
They want to see the trustee as the target.
It has a name. It has a name, and therefore it's an entity. Anything that you give a unique identifier.
You would disagree with Jack.
Oh, yeah.
You would say it is an entity. Much like a corporation is an entity,
yes.
You would say it's an entity.
Here's part of the problem, and Brandon's right, but part of the problem is a lot of times you do not go down and register that trust name.
That presents a lot of problems in a lot of arenas if you don't do that.
Because it's not held in their records, they can't see it.
Right, you've got to do that if it's going to be acknowledged at any time. Otherwise, it's just UDBA.
But no. Hold on. Now, this is specifically around Ohio state real estate law.
Okay.
Because I've registered tons of property in private trusts. Mm-hmm. So it can be done. and it is done all day long.
Correct, but in order for the state to know that it exists, you have to give them some notice.
That's the point. We don't need the state to know it exists. Because for one, it is its own sovereign entity. Remember, we were talking about an express trust under the common law.
Correct, which is the only kind I would ever play with. I understand that.
Yeah, so it's private. So the fact that the government doesn't acknowledge it doesn't matter. It still has interest. It can still register its interest. It can still file liens in the county.
Sure.
It can still file UCC financing statements.
But what Jack has taught for a long time, and perhaps we're simply going to have to agree to disagree on this, but what Jack has taught for a long time, if you don't do some type of a notice of trust or something to let the county or whomever know that it exists, they can't see it and they have to say, no, it doesn't.
Brandon's right. It's private, but they don't see it because that name is not registered in their system. Yeah. There's nothing unlawful with it, certainly, and they're not going to charge you with it being illegal because they have nothing to do with it. But when it comes, let's say, to the county recorder's office, you may file it under the trust name, but if there's going to be a real estate tax on it, they're going to list it in the trustee's name because they know that trustee name is a birth certificate name in their books, but that trust does not.
And that's just in Ohio. Because in California, you could put it in the trust name.
Okay.
In California, you could put it in the trust name, and the trust will get the property tax bill, and the trust will be liable for it. Now, your trust can have in its language the trustee. Now, this is dependent on your trust. Mm-hmm. The trustee can take on all the property in his own name on behalf of the trust,
sure.
Which is what Jack's talking about, which is what happens with a lot of trusts. A lot of times the trustee...
In some states, like in New Hampshire, for example, and I happen to know that we've got a client up there, and if the trust, at least a notice of trust, was not filed, they will simply say it's Brandon Adams, DBA, period. They will simply say it's you, there is no trust.
In what context, or what do you mean?
In anything.
So if the trust has a claim and it files a petition in the court...
if someone has a claim against the trust. So if you had a trust and you were the trustee or the manager or whatever for it, whatever name was being put up front in your capacity, the state of New Hampshire has moved past that because there was no filing. They've said in the filings there is nothing on record, therefore it doesn't exist. It is him, simply DBA. And they've come out.
Who's him?
You, in this case.
What's my relationship?
Our client was the manager of the trust, and so he had never filed any notices, and it came back to bite him. In that way.
But that's a rebuttable presumption.
Yeah.
You can rebut that presumption.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a good point. That's a good point. We found the easier way was to actually just simply give a notice to the Secretary of State and go forward.
Sure. I would say file some kind of an interest or claim in the name of the trust.
Correct.
And then you've got a record of its existence.
And that works well for them. But I want to come back to you now. You talked about actually creating a currency if you have a good trust.
Yes. So... The sound? Okay, thank you. So with a private contract express trust under the common law, you have grantors, which can put property into the trust. That's how the trust is created.
Correct.
The trust then issues what we would call a certificate of capital interest, right? Now, you can also have exchangers, and exchangers can put property into the trust. They're called exchangers because what they're getting in return are certificates of capital interest. These certificates of capital interest are, by definition, a currency that have value, and they entitle you to portion of the assets
of the trust
and returns of the assets.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it would be.
So it's actually more valuable than the money we use today as Federal Reserve notes.
Sure. At least it has some value. So it would almost be, to put it into simple terms, if you had a Corvette and you had a Mustang and you had a Ford pickup truck and you had the title to it, well, I could certainly go to you and say, listen, could you do some work for me? Here's the title to my Corvette. It's worth $20,000, and so you're looking at it that way. So that's the type of currency you're talking about.
Absolutely.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Of course, then you would have to get people to accept it. And we're going to a break. We'll be right back after this break. Stay with us. We have 2 minutes, and we'll be back.
Keep a clock on it.
So far, you're a good audience.
Hold on. I think we had a question here earlier, Jack.
It's actually it's Truth Radio. It's out of California. TruthRadio.com.
All right, we had a question clarification earlier. Paramount security interest holder versus trustee for the third-party petitioner.
he seems they have been used under or interchangeably. Is the question, are they used interchangeably? What's the difference between a paramount security interest holder? A security interest holder, well, security versus trustee for the third-party petitioner. They're kind of asking if you go into court and you come in this way, you come in that way, I think.
You're the trustee of the third-party petitioner. The third-party petitioner, the trust, would be the paramount security interest holder. So, if that's the capacity you're appearing in, it depends. But they are two distinct things, that one does not necessitate another. So they're not necessarily the same or connected, but they can be.
The question, I think, is there any real difference?
Yeah, there are two distinctions. Don't collapse those distinctions. The trust may be the paramount security interest holder, right? Because if I'm the trustee...
I think from a layman's point of view, do you think there's any difference? If I come in as the...
If the trust is a paramount security interest holder, then no, there's no difference. Because as the trustee, I am the trust. And as the trust, I now have the paramount security interest, if the trust holds it. So you could see them as the same thing.
If you don't make clear the fact that it's the paramount security interest holder, there can be lots of security interest holder. I might have a Visa card, a Bank of a MasterCard, American Express card. I might owe Jack money, and he might have a lien against me. These are all creditors or security interest holders. There's only one paramount security interest holder. Whoever has the highest chief.
We're back live. We're back. I'm Pastor Massad. We're back live from here in Scottsdale, Arizona. You know, this is really interesting when you stop and think about it. A lot of people today have forgotten about the power of trust, which really is just a contract, which takes us back to your fundamental view of the universe, Gordon. And here you are hosting this event, and I'm saving you the best for last here. You're doing a great job. This is a fantastic venue. You're a great host.
I don't know if you saved the best for last. You may have got the worst for last.
No, I don't know. We can handle you. I've been to a lot of seminars, and you're doing a great job with it. I think it's fantastic the way you've got it put together. Your son Benton did a good job helping you set it up, and it's a first-class seminar. Amen? Amen? Very good.
You know, as much as I'd like to take credit, Benton and my nephew and probably Jack and Brandon, I didn't have anything to do with that. I just came.
Well, I won't say anything about that. But the reality is, it comes down to even talking with Brandon here about trusts, which are really contracts. It all comes back to what you've said all along, which is everything is contract.
There is one world government today, in our opinion. Always has been. Contract. I love you to be afraid of the Russians and are afraid of this government and of that government. What's worse than a democracy? It is the most insidious form of government there is.
Yeah,
none are more hopelessly enslaved than those that don't know they are. And that's what a democracy teaches. At least in communist country, they know they're enslaved. They know they're taking benefits and they're in a communist socialist country. In America, the mass thinks that democracy means freedom. It's defined in the Webster's dictionary as mobocracy. So if they need to raise taxes because they want to, they don't need to. If they want to raise, and you say, well, how are they going to run the government? Take a look at America. At the turn of 1900, when there was no personal income tax and very little corporate tax, if any, in 1900, at the turn of the century, wasn't America the greatest industrialized nation of the world? How did it accomplish that? Were you going to tell me a lot of these big bridges weren't built and going up in the 1800s, etc.? You darn right.
Well, a lot of people believe that it's probably happened because OSHA traveled back in time. No, never mind.
Yes. It's a wonderful thing to real. There's a court case out of cooperative federalism that kind of sums it up. No political dreamer was ever wild enough to think of breaking down the lines that separate the states and of compounding the American people into one common mass. Well, they've done just exactly that today. Few people in the 50 several union states understand that the United States is a federal corporation. It's not a single nation or a country. And the Supreme Court has ruled thus. It is historically and politically incorrect, as well as contrary to the United States Supreme Court, The American people is a society, not a country or a nation. It's 50 several union states.
Yeah, it doesn't function like that so much anymore, though.
It absolutely does. This is a perfect government. The republic is right here for us in the private, and the democracy is right there for those that don't understand. You know, ignorance and freedom cannot coexist. If you don't understand these things, you must set about to educate yourself to understand. There's a couple of really great cases. Cohen's versus Virginia. It is clear that Congress as a legislative body exercised two species of legislative power. The one limited as to its objects, but extending all over the Union. The other, an absolute exclusive legislative power over the District of Columbia. Congress passes laws for two types of entities. The District of Columbia. Where do you think they got, how they got the Patriot II Act passed? 1,300 pages, 3 days after 9/11? Nobody read it? Because it's for the District of Columbia and its objects. Are you a U.S. citizen? Internationally, it's common to refer to one of us in the several union states as a U.S. citizen. Domestically, it's entirely different. And it's not proper. The other case is the Mayor and Company of New Orleans versus the United States. The government of the United States, as was well observed in the argument, is one of limited powers. It can exercise authority over no subjects except those which have been delegated to it. Congress cannot, by legislation, enlarge the federal jurisdiction, nor can it be enlarged under the treaty-making power. Put those in your heart. These laws that are passed that seem to tread on the Constitution absolutely do not. They are passed for the District of Columbia and its objects.
Let's just say it real simple. What Gordon just cited on both of those cases is we have basically two different objects here. One we call a republic, it's private, and the people are sovereign. The other one is the democracy. It's a part of the District of Columbia through the powers of the national government to regulate subject citizens. And so you have the republic where the people are free, you have the democracy where there are no people. It's the shadow of the people, the straw man, that are ruled as fictions. And you got your choice. You can be in one or the other. We've been talking so far all day long that you can either appear as a creditor, which is a living man or woman, and you're claiming to be in that section of government called the Republic, in which Congress has a very, very limited scope, or you can appear as the straw man debtor that they want you to be, and you're appearing in a military overrun society in which just about every aspect of the life of the straw man is dictated to by the federal government. The role is yours. Choose which role you want to play and live it out.
Choose you this day whom you're going to serve.
Sure, absolutely. And since no man can serve two masters at once, you're going to have to make a very clear choice. Jack, the interesting thing is we began to work with Gordon a couple of years ago. We had you and Jack together on the show, and I think you joined us that night on the show as well. And it was pretty interesting because as I listened, I thought we were doing a show in commerce. And as I listened, I realized, I don't know what he's doing, but it's not commerce. So we had him back again, and I listened again, and I think it was the third time that I had you back before I finally said, you're not doing commerce. What are you doing? And really, you're doing contract, which is very different than the commercial Sam Kennedy stuff that had been going on for a long time and things like that.
Well, are we doing commerce? What is commerce? Is it not the buying, selling, and trading of commodities?
Well, it is, but when I say commerce in the Patriot community, it's sort of in quotes, and it means that whole commercial remedy that people had under the UCC that I still have a pile of letters from people who are in jail from that.
Oh, commercial redemption.
Commercial redemption, that whole process, exactly. And it had merit, and I mean, Jack, you and I promoted it for a long time, and we had Winston and Sam and all these people on. I mean, Sam Sam Kennedy was born on our show and just kind of continue to go from there.
Let's put it in perspective, Pastor. We're using contract to resolve our matters in commerce. And we've already said you got two realms. You got the republic and you have the democracy. The republic has a currency. It's called asset currency. The democracy has a currency, and it's a liability currency.
Federal Reserve notes.
Correct. Federal Reserve notes. Now,
credit money.
Understand you've got the old adage, you get what you pay for. Everybody understands that in the democracy, where you have a liability as a currency, you're just using one debt to set off another debt. You're getting what you pay for. You can't pay for something with a debt because you still owe it. So you don't control it and you don't own it.
Correct.
Now, if you understand that the republic has asset, it used to be publicly called gold or silver, which was denominated as lawful money of a certain quantity and a certain purity of gold or silver struck by the U.S. Mint. That's what you used prior to 1933.
Correct.
Now, that has been removed, but they have replaced it with asset account units that very few people understand the nature of. Now, everybody that was doing the A for B process and this commercial process that, like you said, in the past got in trouble, they had enough knowledge about that so-called asset account that they tried to go out and use it to set things off so they could be in control of their property.
Correct.
What they lacked is they lacked the understanding of contract law to procedurally allow their substantive payments to be recognized under the rule of law in the country.
Now, let me stop you there for a second. That is correct, and that's what makes what Gordon is doing now so successful. And that's the only reason that we're giving it the airtime that we are, because it is being successful. I mean, the successes are just all over the place, and they're nonstop. And that doesn't mean it works every single time, but they are around.
If you follow the guidelines, it does work every single time, does it not, Brandon?
Absolutely.
Jack?
Absolutely.
You know, it's an interesting thing.
May not work the way you wanted it to. But it absolutely
there are
works.
people in the nation who would say if you're behind bars and it didn't work, no matter what you want to call that.
Yeah, but would you say it worked for you being behind bars?
It does work every single time, and it will bring you remedy. What we can give you is that contract if you can keep it. What you're saying, Pastor, is a lot of people have slipped up in court, or they've given up their contract. They started an argument, a controversy granting jurisdiction, and you can't get a remedy arguing. So it's kind of an interesting... It really requires to a great degree some faith when you're doing this to believe it does, because they're sitting there, and if you think you're going to be accepted by your neighbors for discovering something, I promise you, it's going to be an uphill battle. They're going to think you're kooks, you're crazy, and you are a threat to their very existence because you upset their equilibrium horribly so. Cognitive dissonance sets off alarms in their head, and I don't care if, Dr. Don, some of you stand up, Don. Don, if you go talk to Dr. Robinson...
We're going to have to put him on hold for a second. We'll come back. We're going to open up with Dr. Don. We've got to go to another break.
All right.
And I'm Pastor Master. This is Higher Ground Live. And this is our 9th anniversary month. 9 years we've been on the air, and it is great to be celebrating it here in Scottsdale, Arizona with a group like this. We'll be right back. Amen. We'll be right back after this break. Send me an email, Pastor Massad, M-A-S-S-A-D, at highergroundbiblecollege.com. Or give us a call at 315-368-2252. We'll be right back for more Live from Scottsdale after these messages.
I just wanted to clarify one thing before when we get Dr. Don. It's amazing to see that... it's amazing to see what we wanted to clarify with Dr. Don, which is so unique, is that Dr. Don's brother is in prison. And he continues to argue in light of the fact that his own brother has successfully settled 3 cases looking at putting him in jail for 16 and a half years, and his brother still can't stop arguing. Now, if that isn't a unique situation, your own brother, you know, has done a miraculous job of what probably shouldn't be able to be done under the regular way of doing business, and his own brother still can't stop arguing. He got something like a 6-year sentence, and his brother, how long's your brother been in, David? He's been in 1.5 years, and he still won't change. It's the most unique thing I've ever seen.
But he's got an appeal going now, so.
A new homily grits, snack food for the soul. And now here's author Bob Van Hoot.
That's the mayor. The second court case is the mayor and company of New Orleans versus the United States.
Welcome to the excuse factory. God does not want our excuses. He wants a broken spirit and a contrite heart. Only when we confess and take
Mayor, M-A-Y-O-R, mayor. The mayor and company.
And we find that forgiveness brings us hope for heaven.
The mayor et al.
We need to remember that God's excuse window
It's like the mayor and the governor and everybody else.
Et al. Is always open on the avenue of true
the mayor and it's in cooperative federalism that is quoted. For those of you that don't have it, it'll be made available to you.
Clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. Be sure to visit homilygrits.com.
So if you're expecting your neighbors, even when you win a case, to believe what you did, Don's own brother, after 3 cases, still doesn't believe. I've got a bunch of friends of mine, they watch, and we've done a couple of things for them. They don't believe.
And we're back live from Scottsdale, Arizona. Before we bring Dr. Dunn in, I want to talk about something that it's a story. If you've heard me long enough on the air, you've heard me say it probably more than once. I'm sure you guys have heard it. I had the opportunity to get to be very friendly with an attorney in Missouri when our campus was in Missouri, and probably one of the most incredible courtroom presences I've ever seen in anybody. Just this guy walked in, he really commanded the court. And we had, in fact, you were at the meeting, Jack.
Yes.
Our friend out there had a large ministry, and the state hated him. He was taking care of kids, and really difficult kids, and he believed in corporal punishment. They didn't beat kids, but they believed in spanking kids, and the social service people locally did not believe in it at all, and they decided to ignore all law and just go ahead and kidnap all the kids out of his campus. There's 160 or 200 kids, something like that. And it was a huge, huge, huge mess. As a matter of fact, if you watch Alex Jones's 911 Road to Tyranny, you'll see he does a little clip from this campus in Missouri where they kidnapped these kids from. And so I was very friendly with the guy, and his attorneys they're getting nowhere. I mean, they're just getting nowhere at all. And so we brought Jack in and some other people, and one of the guys who was at the meeting was this attorney, very, very sharp guy. And as Jack was talking, he finally interrupted. I knew they didn't really know the come from that we were coming from at that time. I knew that. Our friend did, but they didn't. And he had to kind of get his statutory in-the-box attorneys to understand this. And this guy said this. He said, I've been listening to you, Jack, for the last hour. And I thought, that's nothing. You should see how long I can go. And he says, and what I think I'm hearing reminds me of the days that I was a prosecutor in Colorado. He said, I used to have these, he called them pro se defendants, come up. And I knew he was talking about patriots. And he said, they had the most fascinating stories. And I would sit spellbound listening to them, thinking that I had just learned the most amazing history. But I put every one of them in jail. And he did. And so I look at what we've done in the Patriot community, and in order to get to this place, we really had to go through all that stuff. There was no way to discover the things that we were discovering and not vet them in order to find out, no, that's just not quite the way it works. It's like the story of Colonel Sanders. It took him, 12 or 1,500 presentations before he finally said, you know what, I'm going to start my own place. He just finally had to do it. And then the same thing with us. But where we are now really is sort of at a cellular level of the whole thing. And I know you wanted to bring Dr. Don in, and it was really good to get a chance to meet him. Go ahead, let's bring Dr. Don in.
And we were talking, Don, stand up. Don can tell you, come up to the lectern, Don.
Microphone on?
I'll get it. I'll bring this over to him. Go ahead. We get that one? Good.
Maybe, Don, you could tell us a little bit about your situation of 3 cases and whether any of that's true, and does your brother not believe you, and why wouldn't he believe? I mean, help us a little. This is kind of unimaginable.
Hey, Dr. Don, it's good to do this show live with you because we had 3 shows I think we did face-to-face, on the air, and it's good to be face-to-face with you. And I got to tell you, the first time I did the show with you, I said, oh my goodness, why do we have this guy on? He was still nervous and unsure. But the last time, I was like cheering for you. Every time we hit a break, I was like, yes, this guy's got it now.
This is an interesting thing. Dr. Don, when he did his first show with the pastor, he hadn't completed his 3rd case yet. And let me tell you, after 4 or 5 plus years of litigation, the first 4 with attorneys and the next 2 with Jack and I, you get a little tired, and it's tough to believe you're going to prevail in 3 in a row. But this man doggedly, nobody's got the perseverance of Dr. Job over here. And I'm going to tell you, his faith never wavered. He could tell us a little bit about it. But Don, how many cases, how many years were you facing? What was this Jiminy Christmas?
I was facing...
Put it into the mic.
Is it on now?
Yes.
It is. Just get a little bit closer to it.
Okay. I was facing 16 and a half years in jail and around $200,000 in fines and 3 to 4 years in probation. And...
how much jail time?
16 and a half years.
Ah, yes. And what was and a revocation of your medical professional license?
Oh, yes. I was going to lose my license to practice because anytime you have a felony, they take your license away.
This was all because you listened to your accountant to try to save you money, wasn't it?
I didn't listen to him. He just didn't check the box that he was supposed to. And I signed my tax return, and it was... if you sign it, it says, if you knowingly and willingly sign this and it's wrong, you are committing fraud and perjury.
This was for a box that didn't get checked?
Yes.
I never asked you what the root of it was. This was for a box that a check mark didn't appear in?
Yes, because I had a foreign bank account. There's nothing illegal about any foreign bank accounts that you may have. It really wasn't my account, but I had signature control on it. And my accountant read the thing and said that if it's not your account, you don't have to check the box. He didn't read the next 2 paragraphs that said if there's over $10,000, you have to check the box and fill out the paperwork.
Let me ask you this, Doctor. You may not have been on the account, but if you went a little deeper, who was the beneficiary of that account? Who got the money out of it?
It was a trust that I was the manager of.
Who got the money?
If it was a trust and I was the manager, I controlled where the money went.
You're doing good. Keep going. Keep going. You're doing good. This audience isn't very forgiving if you mess up. I've heard them already a couple times.
You know, if you set up some kind of a Byzantine offshore scheme to avoid paying taxes, you got a problem. And just like if the taxes where we used to be able to write off a vacation home, if you bought that vacation home for tax purposes, you could be taxed, and that's fraud. If you bought it because you wanted a vacation home and just happened to get the write-off, well, that's a different. That goes to what, Jack? Called what, Ray?
Mens rea.
Mens rea, your intent. Whether you really intended, what did you intend? Now, of course, where Dr. Don on the tax form said, are you on a foreign bank account that has more than 10 grand in it? No. The accountant said, don't worry, don't sign this. But, of course, what did the accountant tell you after you got, like hot water? He said he was really sorry.
Did the accountant go to jail, or did the accountant get charged?
No, the accountant didn't get charged. He would have been charged $250 for each year, and that slap on the wrist, and that was about it. When they went after me, they were going after the other. I hired 2 attorneys and 2 accountants, basically worked on my case from 2006 to 2009 when I hired them. And I found out in 2010, talking to the accountant, exactly what happened and got to the 2nd paragraph. And Jack and Gordon helped me set off and correct the problem. The thing was, the 3 years I went through with the accountants and the 2 attorneys and the other accountant, I did the same thing. Even though it says knowingly and willingly did this, And I did it 3 more years because I knowingly and willingly knew I was doing the wrong thing.
I want to jump in with something for a second, because the mix, the foundation of what the process, we'll back up. The foundation of the process that you're doing here starts with the unlimited bond. Is that what we're calling it? No, what are we calling it, Jack? We've called it a lot of things through the years. What are we calling it?
Look, IRS said he screwed up, and so they had
not to him. I'm talking about the A process.
Our bond is to pay the debt, because we're not having Dr. Don come in as the sinner that failed to check the box. We're having him come in as an accommodation party that's going to correct the sin.
And he has the ability to correct the sin because he has access to this
bond. The asset account.
To the asset account.
The sin tax, which is the criminal process.
Now pause a second, because a lot of people will refute that asset account exists, that bond is real. And we've looked at it from a lot of different perspectives, and for years we've had patriots who have tried to access it one way or another. But I want to say something that I remember talking with a couple of people about who didn't believe it exists. I said it absolutely has to exist. I haven't found too many people who have actually been able to say it's held by this agency at this address and the accounting is there. But when they took the gold, they were going to give it back. You were loaning it. They asked to bring it in.
Not really. And LBJ said
it was put into trust. It was.
Yeah, but LBJ said in the 60s, he said we never intend to go back.
Yeah, but perhaps, but that's not what was said when FDR
irrevocable trust.
It was we need you, and it was irrevocable trust it was put into.
Yeah.
And so the reality is that the accounting must exist. That we have not found it someplace. You have always said, both of you guys have said, that governments always do things right for the most part. And so there has to be an accounting for it. It's not thinkable that they would have taken that and not given an accounting for it. So therefore, it has to exist, and it is accumulating massive amounts of interest, and therefore, it has to be something that we can't access. It has to.
You talked about a bond being existing. What's a bond?
I'm talking about the asset account.
That's still a bond, isn't it? Promise to pay.
Well, the asset account is a security. It's a title to the property that we gave to them so that they could use it to underwrite their corporate offices. But yet it was borrowed or loaned from us.
That's the truth of it.
Because it's not irrevocable, and because the whole contract is not irrevocable, we can revoke it and get it back if we apply the correct process.
Yeah, I've heard some naysayers use the belief in that account as something to demagogue any of the members of the Patriot community who believe in such a thing. But the reality is that the account has to exist. There's no way for it not to.
I think where people get into trouble is not in the account, it's the belief that there's like Federal Reserve notes sitting in a box earmarked for them.
Sure.
I think that's the belief that when you hear the word account, that's what people believe. That's what they associate with that word. Yet an account is just a ledger. And you have an asset account, meaning there's a ledger, a side to the public accounting that is for asset, that holds where the trustee accounts for the assets. That's what account is, an accounting for. So people get into the belief that there's this box of Federal Reserve notes out there for them, and they want to pull money out of it.
Yeah, I think that's what got a lot of patriots in trouble. Because originally, Jack, it was honorable people who were looking for truth. Right. And when all of a sudden there was money attached, a whole bunch of people came running in.
I agree with Brandon. After the break, I'll qualify that.
And we'll be right back after this break. I'm Pastor Massett. This is Higher Ground Live, and we're live from Scottsdale, Arizona. There's still time. We'll tell you how to come to the seminar if you want to come here tomorrow and Sunday. Send me an email. Pastor Massett, M-A-S-S-A-D, at highergroundbiblecollege.com. Or just give me a call. We'll be right back.
Wouldn't there have to be an account there for Pastor Massey?
Yes, question.
Wouldn't there have to be an account there for them to have settled the account with me with the 3 cases that I had?
They set his off.
Yeah, it has to be. Absolutely.
Listen to this bit of history.
Otherwise, he'd be in jail paying his debt.
Yeah, because
to
otherwise,
society.
remember, everything in government must balance to zero. It must. Government doesn't function unless all accounts come to zero. So the fact is, that account was brought to zero somehow, and it was that accounting, that asset account, that allowed the accounting to come to zero. So it always has to come to zero.
I didn't get off for just being a good guy.
What is law training that when he pledged to defend?
What if the who?
The media believes that it has to go negative.
No. The media wouldn't believe that either. Proper government function, government functions on a budget. The budget is what they operate from, right? So in reality, actually, Zach, you should talk. Zach we'll let Zach have a few minutes on budget and accounting. Zach, we were just discussing governments having to come to zero on accounting and showing as that is the mirror image of why we know there's an asset account.
Zach is someone I'd like to have maybe join us on the show tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
I want to talk to Zach a little bit. I heard his question. It sounded like he didn't fall off the turnip truck last night, that's for sure.
No, it was the day before.
The day before? He learned a lot when he hit his head.
Yeah.
Dr. Don, we're good with you for now. We're going to go on to a couple of other things. Thank you very much.
It's just that informal. Whatever it is you feel you'd like to contribute to Truth Radio, just ask for the Great Civil War Debate. When you write in, if you have any interest in the Civil War at all, this is a debate you just have to hear. Our address is P.O. Box 344, Nipomo,
This last segment goes really quick. Last segment goes really quick because they're off at about 4 minutes still.
And the zip code is
So we got less than probably 8 or 10.
Look forward to hearing from you soon.
And we're back live here in Scottsdale, Arizona, with an amazing seminar. And one of the things that we've done here that Jack, you and I have done, and together I believe, and I know I've done it in some other seminars, is to have a mock trial. And so far, you'll be bringing more and more people as we go on. And one of the things about the mock trials is it really gives everybody a chance to get out there and see what it's like. And you sit there and you say, you're just in the room here, and it's not a court. But I have watched the biggest, toughest guys start to shake, and their mouths get dry, and they get all sweaty, even though they know it's all just fake. But Jack, I have to say something. You were a judge a little while ago in one of the mock trials. What planet were you representing? In what planet do the federal judges act like you acted in that trial?
Well, remember, the facts are on the moon. We don't care about the facts. Everything in the public is backwards. It's upside down. It's insanity. And in the public courtroom, it's all about controversy and argument. If you can get anybody into an argument in a controversy, remember, in the courtroom, there's no substance at all left in the public, so everybody's spinning their wheels. So does it really make any sense or any difference what goes on? We're just trying to confuse the defendant, because by the time he is a defendant, we already know he's the debtor. He isn't paying his debt, so therefore he is guilty. All we got to do is put on a really good show, allow the attorneys to make a little bit of revenue off of playing the game, and then eventually the defendant is going to be found guilty. He's either going to be put in prison or not, depending on the seriousness. He's going to be charged the sum of money due, irregardless. And so it makes no never mind what happens. They make it look formal, and they make it look like they're doing something, but the more confusing it is, the better it is for the whole process.
And you have said forever that the facts are on the moon. That has been your line forever.
I mean, it's the patriot that thinks he's got a good story and he's a good guy that just wants to go in and tell it that is the most naive of all. It's never going to work.
I've got a question I want to ask Brandon, unless you have something that you want to say at this point, Gordon, because we've got a couple more shows we're going to do live here. Brandon, you started talking about something today, which I happen to see still up here, about account, title, and possession. Give us a quick overview of that.
I actually invented it at one of our workshops just as a simple mechanism for people to be reminded of the elements that need to be addressed when you're settling anything. The way I had written it up in that workshop, I believe, was step 1, settle the account, step 2, acquire title, and step 3, acquire or perfect possession. So it's basically it's a mechanism for us to know when we have something out of balance. We may call it a problem, we may call it an issue, we may call it a charge, but it's something that needs to be brought back to balance. Those are the things we need to remember in dealing with it, that there's an account to be settled, and that must be settled first. And then there's a title that must be perfected or acquired, and that there is oftentimes, if it's tangible, possession.
Now, when you talk about this title, you're not talking about the one that the state of Arizona issues for your new Mustang.
No, not necessarily. We speak in terms of both legal and equitable title. I believe the public, for the most part, neglects the legal title part because all that most people are made aware of is the equitable title.
Yeah, most people have no idea that title they get from the state isn't the title at all. It says certificate of title. People just don't realize what that means.
Right. Yeah, they don't realize it's like a certificate of beneficial interest. It's like you're a beneficiary, and so that you hold equitable title, because the person who issues the certificate holds the controlling or legal title.
Correct.
So yeah, it's a mechanism so that you know, okay, one, I've addressed the account, now I need to address the title in this scenario. So we've applied it to court cases, we've applied it to different commercial scenarios.
And I just want to take a minute to our listeners and let them know that there are still 2 days to get here if you're anywhere near Scottsdale, Arizona. Give Benton a call at 480-319-1552. That's 480-319-1552. And if you can't make it, by all means, give them a call and get a copy of the DVD set, because you don't want to miss the information that's coming forth at this conference. You guys are doing a great job bringing out some stuff. Where do you want to take us next, Gordon, since you're the host here?
Well, we're going to take you to a break for the evening in about 7 minutes, and then we're going to get together not at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning, but at 10 a.m., so you won't have to be too stressed out. And we're going to start getting right into some of these things that Brandon has outlined for us, along with the administrative process that gets you remedy in all sorts of things, including your mortgage. We'll hear a little more from Dr. Don, some other testimonials, and a few things like that. We're going to practice some court. There's going to be a few other little things that are going to be a little fun to do. And let's see how you all fare in a kind of a few situations. Because you're going to run into these situations in your lives. Some of you are, if you haven't already. And it doesn't matter.
But this stuff was only going to work with civil stuff, not criminal stuff, correct?
Well, we all know that civil and criminal, essentially, it's the same thing. Everything's civil. There is no criminal. It is said in 27 CFR 72.1, all crimes are commercial. Criminal, civil, it's just as commercial an account that we're dealing with, is it not, Jack?
Absolutely.
And that commercial account can be dealt with. You've got an ink pen, or you've got a mouth, and you can deal with it on either one of those bases. It's nice to have some underlying paperwork moving forward, but in one sense, it's just as Benton, when he was up here, said. It's what Jack says. Brandon will tell you. I'll tell you. Do you have the original charging or accusatory? Do you got the claim? Do you have a bona fide claim? And if you don't have one, I conditionally accept on proof of claim that the moving party does not appear and show cause why my tender of payment of the obligation to pay the instrument, give me the claim, that's my tender of payment.
At the end of the day,
doesn't constitute discharge.
At the end of the day, the paperwork will not save you. You've got to be able to articulate. You have to own the technology.
You know, you could take Brandon, how much paperwork did you do in your case to get some felony charges on drug charges? You admitted it was your stuff. They took you in. You gave an ID. You did all that. How much paperwork did you file?
Not one. And in fact, that's my favorite story to tell people, because a lot of people come to my workshops and seminars, they want the magic documents that Brandon writes. And I'll tell you, there's no magic in any document. And that my greatest moment in contracting didn't involve a single piece of paper.
It is said thus: He who fails to assert his rights has none. And what is assert? It is defined as to state positively with great confidence, but with no objective proof. And let me kind of close up with a statement from out of Blum's book that's really cool. This is something you have to understand because it goes into consideration doctrine and all that other kinds of thing. Although agreement between the parties is essential to the creation of contract, the question of what constitutes legally sufficient agreement can be difficult. The law does not demand an inquiry into the minds of the parties to decide whether they had formed an actual intent to contract. Such an investigation into the actual thoughts and understanding of a party, called subjective, that's of your subconscious, subjective intent would not adequately protect the other party's reasonable reliance on apparent intent as portrayed by words and conduct. Your actions speak louder than words. Also, because the only means of establishing the true state of mind of a person is the testimony of that person, evidence of true intent is likely to be unreliable and colored by self-interest. Don't take the stand in a criminal case, ladies and gentlemen. Don't even be taking the stand. Don't be going to trial. Therefore, in deciding whether a person agreed to a contract, the law gauges intent objectively. That is, it evaluates the person's overt acts, words, and conduct to decide whether they reasonably signified an intent to enter into the transaction. So, it's your acts and actions and conduct, and your paper that you file in there is going to be put aside readily. We had a dear friend that went to a sentencing, could have walked out of there, do his thing, instead failing to walk out in a timely fashion, and then in the middle or on the way out of there handing an appeal in, which was taking a benefit, just closed the door on the... Our friend got his bracelet off, did so many things that were unique in that case. Was it not, Pastor?
It definitely needed a little bit more work. But with that, we're out of time. Anybody who has a chance, give Benson a call. 480-319-1552. Come and join us here in Scottsdale, Arizona. We got a great group of people.
These Commerce Coach workshop sessions, hereinafter sessions, are the private exchange of ideas and concepts between the providers and the recipients. The content is not meant as legal advice. The use or attempted use of any idea or procedure discussed in these sessions, as applied to the recipient's own personal transactions, cases, or controversies, or applied to other cases, may or may not result in a favorable outcome or the same outcome as discussed in these sessions. Each transaction, case, or controversy may be different as a result of unique actions or unique statements made by the parties therein, and each different act or statement in any transaction affects or may affect whether any procedure or idea discussed in these sessions is relevant to the recipient's transactions or that the outcome thereof will be depicted as in these sessions. The discussion of ideas or procedures in these sessions is not exhaustive of the subjects being discussed. Many ideas and concepts that can affect the outcome of any legal or commercial procedure are not discussed in these sessions, and the fact that the recipients may not be aware of these issues may have an adverse effect on the outcome of the recipient's procedures. It is the responsibility of the recipients to understand their own transactions and to apply the appropriate and complete concepts necessary for a procedural and substantive remedy thereto. These sessions may be redistributed privately by any recipient to another recipient requesting them, conditioned upon the fact that this notice is provided therewith. If you have any questions, you may contact the Commerce Coach by email at info@thecommercecoach.com.
Greetings and welcome to Higher Ground Live. I'm your host, Pastor Massad, bringing you greetings again, not from our usual location, but from Scottsdale, Arizona, the home of the Gordon Hall, Jack Smith, and Brandon Adams Contract and Commerce Seminar. It's good to have you guys back with us this morning. Did everyone get a good night's sleep?
Yes.
Good, because you don't sound awake. Glory to God. I want to ask Jack a question. I'm going to start out with Jack, because Jack, I always joke about you being the granddaddy of the Patriot community. You've been around for a long time, and so many people who have ever done anything substantial in the Patriot community essentially cut their teeth, if I can put it, listening to you. And one of the great testimonies to you is just the staying power that you've had. You know, so many people come and go, but you've been around for such a long time. What do you see here that's exciting you in Scottsdale?
Well, you know, I'm not the originator of anything, even though I go back to the days of Methuselah, at least in your mind, Pastor. There was George Gordon, there was Elvick, there were so many people that started the movement, but we're here today, and we've got just a wonderful group of people at this seminar, and we're about solutions, and that's what we're talking about. And in order to get on to solutions, you sometimes have to go back and see what the problems are in the history a little bit. But really, we started out yesterday, and we talked about solutions, and the solutions to all of our commercial problems are really very easy in concept. They've got a debt that they want paid in money, and all we have to do is really endorse the instrument which is creating the charge. And it's that simple. And yet, it's not that simple in reality, because they're going to do everything they can to obstruct your ability to endorse the instrument, and they're going to poo-poo every concept that you've got to belittle it, to make it appear as though you're totally insane in what you're doing. So it all amounts to procedure. It's not what you're doing, it's the way you're doing it. And in the past, most patriots have tried to fight them to some kind of a solution, and in reality, the real solution is to negotiate it as a diplomat under contract law, to get your endorsement on the instrument, either in the public or to do a private administrative process in the background to get your second witness. And so yesterday we talked about the endorsement. I think most everybody here understands that. Today we're going to talk about the three-part process in the private side to get the evidence of your set-off. And I look very positive to this group understanding what it is that we're trying to teach.
Now, and that's really, excuse me, that's really important, because that three-part process that you're talking about is really the evolution of all of the things that we've done through the years. I mean, I could go over it just like you could, and I'm sure many of the people in the room remember all the different processes that have gone on in the last 20 years.
Yes.
But where it's come down to now is really to understand things at a cellular level and be able to put forth a process that addresses everything that heretofore kept surprising us.
Correct.
Brandon, what do you see here? What do you see at this seminar that's exciting you?
What I see that's exciting is the opportunity to share our processes and our knowledge as it has evolved. I believe, just as I'm sure Jack and Gordon, that we're constantly evolving ourselves, our process, and becoming more effective. So each time we get together with a group of people like this, it's an excellent opportunity to share where we have come to and where we have evolved to. And then I see that.
So you don't feel like we've arrived and this is it?
No, I don't believe we'll ever arrive.
And that's really important, because a lot of people are looking for the silver bullet. They're looking for the answer. This is it, and I don't have to study anymore. Just put that piece of paper folded up in my wallet and I'm good.
Right.
But it doesn't work like that.
No, it doesn't.
Because the other side's always morphing to meet us.
Exactly. And I look at it as a process of mastery, where you never really achieve it. You're always moving forward, either forward or you're moving backwards. And having a group of people this large is an opportunity for where we've come to be spread to others around the world. My wish is that everyone walks away with a substantial understanding such that they can share it and others can be more effective in their dealings in contract and commerce.
That's very good. One of the things I want to let our listeners know is if you didn't get a chance to make it here to Scottsdale, Arizona, you definitely want to get a hold of the DVD series here. Give Benton a call at 480-319-1552. That's 480-319-1552. Or just, you're going to miss out on so much, because this is a fantastic seminar, and the stuff that's coming out is great. I want to go over to Gordon. Gordon, this is a tough question to ask you. What do you see here that encourages you? These are all the people you bang heads with every day. These are the ones that you call me at 1 in the morning and say, "Can you pray for me, Pastor? They're driving me crazy."
What I find exciting is we have a large group, so that indicates that we have a strong interest in what we're doing, which is contracts and commerce. I'd like to think that the silver bullet is obtainable, in that we understand clearly what the game is. It is contracts, it is offer and acceptance. I'll agree with Brandon in that we might have some small adjustments in the technology for application of it, but I think it's clear. Law is very clear. The fact is that we don't understand it and understand the exact, perhaps, procedural process to implement in certain areas, which is being fine-tuned, but that never changes. So the fact that we've defined the problem, it is half solved. The problem is there. This is nothing but contracts. Now, how you do some of the paperwork or some of the procedures, but I think it's getting easier and easier, and in my opinion, I think the silver bullet is already well known. You just got to get a contract and hold it. Now, the silver bullet where Brandon's saying there's not going to be a sentence you can give or a piece of paper that you could file to make and give you your results. But the fact that the silver bullet is in our hands today, in my opinion, is absolute. And that silver bullet is get your contract and hold it. And understand who you are. And understand this game of contracting law. I think we just talked about you see things that they're morphing and adjusting. No, they're just they understand contract law absolutely, and it's a simple concept of create a controversy. And as we continue to refine some of the procedures that we do, I think it's going to be down to an exact science, like pretty much like now, if not in such a short horizon, that the simple application and adjustments is going to continue to assure the people that apply these contract principles we do now, they win.
That's actually
so in my opinion, what's exciting is we're already here, ladies and gentlemen. We understand the rules. We know what to do. Now, of course, some of us lose our way. We don't say the right thing. You take Benton the other day in a interview with the FBI. That absolutely makes complete contractual sense and in commerce. Who are these guys? We've got some people here. We've got a gentleman from South Carolina that's been in the middle of a grand jury subpoena. Jack and I have done several IRS subpoenas and federal subpoenas. They're all handled the same. And the silver bullets, in other words, it just takes a lot of gunpowder and prep to have that silver bullet go off, but absolutely we've got it. That's what's exciting. These people, we got 100 people here today, and
so really it's all about mastering this whole thing.
All it's going to be, and what we're going to be teaching the next couple of days, and Brandon's going to start out right after this with some beautiful stuff. Jack's going to go into it. We're also going to touch base and create a little tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., 9 to 10, Jack's going to do a little explanation on tax forms and filling them out from our perspective. So that's free to anybody that wants to come in here in the morning and enjoy that, and it'll be taped. However, this next 2 days that we've got going with Brandon and Jack and getting down right to the nuts and bolts of how do you get this contract, we keep talking about it, and we had some practice yesterday, how do you keep it?
That's right.
And some of the things. This is, we're here and now. That's what's exciting, because it's game beginning. It's not game over, it's game beginning. You'll know what you need to do and say. You may not have it for that exact situation, but you understand that you got to use a conditional acceptance, you got to put the burden of proof back on. This is what's exciting. We have the answers. It's done. Now, completing it and adjusting it for each situation is not a difficult thing. It's just onerous and a lot of paperwork and this and that and getting the notaries right and having a notary that can hold up if, Benny gets calls from attorney generals and attorneys all the time and the police and this and that and it's the craziest calls you'd love. They're simply alleging that he signed or he notarized people's signatures that he never notarized. They're not there arguing that. They're there to see if you're a creditor. This is what Jack talked about. This is what Brandon teaches. It's all about the come from. We've talked that the study of contract law is not simply the study of rules. It necessarily requires careful thinking about underlying policy, legal process, legal philosophy, and historical perspective. That's in the front of Blum's book. And when you go into, let me just read one short thing to get us a little bit excited about how cool a contract book is. Understand there used to be what's called a classical school and a contemporary school of approach to law. I mean contracts. And remember, we talked about underlying policy, historical perspective. Now apply those two areas to this little section from Brian Blum's book, Classical Contract Law, section 2.3.1. The classical school reflects the priorities of its age, which greatly valued free enterprise, private autonomy, and laissez-faire approach to economic activity. In other words, leave us alone, let us do our thing, right? We all like that. Ease of government, this and that. But we need some historical perspective, and this is what this section gives. Classical theory, therefore, stresses the facilitation of contractual relationships and favored a strictly objective approach. If parties manifested contractual intent, the inclination was to enforcement of the transaction without too fine a probing of the actual state of understanding of either party or much solicitousness for those whose economic impotence may have curtailed the exercise of free will. Now that got a little deep, but hold on. The classical approach was also
30 seconds here.
The classical approach was also heavily influenced by the legal philosophy of positivism, which stressed the primacy of legal rules and considered the court's principal role to be finding and applying blah, blah, blah. As the 20th century wore on, the classical conception of contract law began to erode. Why? Objective intent. Enthusiasm for the free market was tempered by a growing recognition of the need to regulate the freedom of powerful contractors.
All right, let's pick up on that when we come back from this break. I'm Pastor Massad, Higher Ground Live. Send me an email, Pastor Massad, M-A-S-S-A-D, at highergroundbiblecollege.com. That's Pastor Massad, M-A-S-S-A-D, at highergroundbiblecollege.com. We'll be right back for more here from Scottsdale right after these messages.
Now, it's not going to hurt to repeat in this 2-minute break this same thing. Enthusiasm for the free market was tempered by a growing recognition of the need to regulate the freedom of powerful contractors to safeguard the rights of weaker parties and to affect social policy concerning matters such as consumer protection, employee rights, and business ethics. Under the strict business, these powerful organizations could be feeding us garbage, crap, and even worse than it is now. Because where are you going to go if they control the food markets, this and that? This powerful government has reined in these powerful contractors giving us, and that doesn't mean some still don't get over here and there, but you know what? That's what lawsuits, the national sport, this democracy is all about. These corporations, powerful contractors, should they be allowed to own allodial land everywhere? How long do you think it would take gigantic corporations, Rockefellers, to buy up all the available land and lease it back to you and own it? And no, this government has done such marvelous job for all of us. If you look to the positive side of it, what a boon. And we've got answers and things happening today. But if you start reading a little bit, study a little of this stuff, all these principles and concepts that we've already studied and do, it's going to come real clear why it works and how to hold it. And these simple rules that we give you, don't argue, don't make statements, don't justify, don't explain, because that's going to be door 4 arguing. you're dead. And you never want to go silent because you're dead. And you usually don't want to accept what they're offering, but sometimes you do. So you got to be attuned to what's being offered. And like Brandon said, is it an offer? Is it this? Is it that? And then the most that we often do is a conditional acceptance. Now it kind of gets strange because people take this to an extreme. Jack and I had one client. They offered to dismiss the case. That was Boyan. They offered to dismiss the case, and he said, I have to think about it. Because he's so used to doing conditional acceptance, he didn't know what conditional acceptance to offer for a dismissal. Are you kidding me?
All right, we're coming back up.
He was trying to get the case dismissed. It was so cool. So, okay, here we go.
We're back up. I'm Pastor Massad. We're back live here from Scottsdale, Arizona. You know, Gordon, with what you just said, one of the things that comes back to me, something that listeners to my show have heard me say 100 times, the difference between an amateur and a professional. And an amateur is someone who practices until he gets it right. A professional is someone who practices until he can't get it wrong. And that's really a philosophy that I think everybody in the Patriot community and everybody who's studying with you here absolutely has to get hold of, that they've got to master this information and this technology.
I'm with you. Brandon, you had a thought?
Yeah, I'd like to make the distinction. We've talked about the science of it, and you made a brief mention of what I would call the art, and you called it by way of being. Jack, I think, was paramount in my development along the line of the art. Jack was the first person I'd ever heard speak about going to peace. And for me, that speaks into the art of the come from and the way of being. And for me, it's the most significant thing. The science changes, the science evolves, and like you said, we've become quite adept at perfecting the science side of it. Procedure, perfecting the contract. Yet, if you're not clear in who and how you are being in executing the science, that it has an effect on how effective your science will be. Having someone that is by nature combative executing this process is not as effective as someone who is in a place of peace within their heart, within their soul. And so there's, I think, there needs to be some emphasis on, yes, it is necessary for you to study, to become familiar with the science, yet something that you can't study is your, as we call it, come from, and who you're being and how you're being in the world. And it's something that you must focus on in every aspect of your life. Because if you're combative at home, when you go to court, you can pretend to be in a place of peace, but ultimately your results will show that you are combative. And all
that's where you're coming from. It won't take much to get you back to that combative state.
Exactly.
I think Brandon is on point because we've talked about this. We've had many students that have received their remedy not because of their processes that they did, but their come from is what got them their remedy. And that's a real important thought he's talking about. You're not a battler over here, and then when it comes time to do the process, that who you are doesn't come through. And if the government or a judge is there on not simply just process, and he only has a right to enforce a contract, doesn't mean you can't, but are they really going to let some really astute, sharp, cocaine-dealing murderer, because he can say and do the right things, get off? I got a feeling that isn't, I'm not sure what, and I understand, but I'd sure like, we had one guy out in L.A. that was a big cocaine dealer and busted with coke and scales in the trunk of his car, and he beat the case. But you know what? His heart was in the right place. He called me 2, 3, 4 weeks ago, and he's actually going to work for the judge.
Really? Is that the guy we had on the show at one point?
Greg.
Yeah, wonderful guy. He actually, after the show, just to show you the real heart change that he had, he called me to tell me personally that he wanted me to know that he really had changed his life, and he was not the drug dealer anymore, and would never go back to that. So I'm encouraged to hear that he's even now going for the judge. That's great.
Hey, he's going to go to work for 1 day a week for the judge and learn and grow. The guy really did have a heartfelt change, and it's not an easy thing to get. Now, Brandon runs these spiritual courses to help get you there. But these are things, hopefully, that we all inherently understand, that nice guys finish first. They always do. Cause and effect rules the universe. And if you want to win the game, we do teach that an integral part of this game is your come from, what you're thinking about. Yes, at first you're going to be into this a little bit based on self-aggrandizement. What's in it for me? I want my mortgage out, I want my bills off. But much like Brandon, when you come out of a successful situation like he did in jail, or the many other ones that some of us have done, I mean, Dr. Don, I'd love to hear, he's here. He's continuing his education. Why? Obviously, it's important. Is it more important than just about anything else? Yes, it is. Because democracies end in anarchy. Our America, our society, made up of 50 several union states, is to a great degree at risk. The world is at risk. Is it going to prevail? Absolutely. Father in heaven's got everything under control. None of us have to worry about that. We don't have to be afraid that, there's not going to be starting in 2013, Nibiru's going to hit this planet. Goodness, quit worrying about any of that stuff. If it hits, we're through, so don't worry. There's nothing you can do about it. What we're doing now is, and Jack teaches this, put the best light on it. Everything that happens to you, and we've talked. Do you think this government didn't ease the credit big time in 2001 and put everybody back in debt? No, they didn't put everybody in debt. Everybody put themselves in there, then cut the credit off. Who is at these seminars? Who is listening? Who are our clients? People that almost have nowhere else to turn because they're in a bind. And some of you are here for pure enlightenment, and that's great too. But problems are opportunities. And so that's the way I've always viewed it. So if you have an indictment, if you have a charge, if you have bills you can't pay, thank Almighty God you got them. Because you're sitting here trying to say, find me an answer. Where is my answer to this thing I can't deal with? Some of us have had attorneys. We got one person in here that Jack and I work with, and she's had an ongoing case with some theft of her ID and this and that. And the long and the short, when the attorney gets done, she's not getting anything and maybe have to pay something. Now that's where that case was ending. These attorneys do their job. You got to be crazy to have an attorney. How bad do they got to make it for all of us before we turn away? And of course, CJS, 7 CJS, Section 4, Corpus Juris Secundum, Section, attorney-client, his first duties to the courts, then the public, and third, in bold italics, not the client. People say, wait, what'd you say? Not the clients. Ask your attorney next time you think about hiring one, could you explain not the clients to me? Oh, that doesn't mean anything. I guess you got eyes that can't see. So anyway, Pastor, I'll concur with Brandon and Jack. Your come from is so important in all this. You want Father in Heaven's help and good spirit, because spirit and light does radiate. And it does reach out to other lit up spirits in light. And if you think these judges aren't lit up, you think they're happy putting people in jail, they're making revenue, that's just a bunch of crap. They're not thrilled about the destruction of society, about these poor people that keep coming in, drug addicts and thieves and liars, and they're not thrilled about putting them away. This isn't a pleasurable thing to punish people. They're not taking any joy in that. They take great joy when they see you come in, and we've had several judges make awesome comments about, one of them said, what a great way for me a phenomenal way for me to retire on a guy doing this. What did that mean? We took it as the people are waking up. And after how many decades of watching the erosion of society due to ignorance, that there's some light coming? How long do you think it's going to take people to start seeing and hearing all of these successes of Dr. Don and everybody else that's getting them before they say, and we've already had a judge or two say, it's an epidemic across America. In the prison systems, it's everywhere. We've got in a Chicago prison system, right, we got 3 or 4 guys on this in the same area, right? This is so cool. It's spreading like a virus. That's right, light does that. Good does that. You can count on people going to do things in their own best self-interest. So count on things are going to get better every day. And we don't care. The democracy can do what it wants.
No, that's excellent. One of the things I want to let our listeners know is this is not our usual show. We're actually broadcasting live from this seminar, so you're getting a little taste of some of what is what's available here. You know, one of the things that is, as we go to the break, Gordon, you always talk about the book As a Man Thinketh, and you quote a little different section from it than the one that I have committed to memory. I found the basic thesis of the book, I think it was in the 2nd chapter, where it says this: a man is where he is, that he may learn, that he may grow. When he learns the spiritual lesson that circumstance has for him, then and only then will that give way to new circumstances. And if people have not had a chance to read As a Man Thinketh, I know you recommend it highly. I recommend it as well. It's, what is it, 70 or 90 pages, and it's just an amazingly profound book.
It's 27 pages.
Is it 27 pages?
27 pages, octavo size.
Read it at the
That's
break.
6 by 9 is nothing to read. Come on.
That's right. You've got if you've read it. I don't ask people if they've read it. I ask them how many times have you read it. And you really need to read that book, commit it to memory. It should really flow out of you. And it's just some solid biblical truths, foundational truths, spiritual truths by which the universe functions. And it's just really, really well said, really well put together. We've got about a minute and a half till break. Where do you want to take us when we come back from the break?
Well, we'd like to kind of start orienting ourselves to where we're going right after this show, which is going to be into the remedy and processes used. So Brandon's going to start out with some really exciting stuff. Jack's going to chime in, and I'm going to watch him. So we're going to have a little bit of fun and start getting down to business. How do you get your remedy, and what are the processes used? What is due process? And try and get you so that you absolutely understand what you need to do. That doesn't mean you know how to do it, but you'll know that you need to apply an administrative process to a particular situation, whatever it be, to obtain your remedy. And we'll get samples of them, and then of course it's as simple as, once you've got your contract, your administrative process, how do you hold it? Well, we talk about that, and so we'll have some more practice sessions between today and tomorrow, but we want to focus on your remedy, these commercial processes, and you will understand clearly, God, I know I need to do an administrative process, a 1, 2, 3 step of this, this, and this.
And we'll be right back after this break, and we'll jump right into this. I'm Pastor Massett. This is Higher Ground Live. Stay tuned. You won't want to miss the rest of this session. You have 2 minutes.
We have 2 minutes. So we're going to get down to a lot of real good stuff today and tomorrow. So we want you to be excited. So if we have we'll hold up questions. But Brandon's going to start off with some really neat stuff after the show here, and we're going to start dovetailing into it right now. So it doesn't matter whether we do it here or
up there. Absolutely. Continue the seminar. Might we have, I don't know, the guy in the back of the room with his tie-dye shirt?
I'm going to have to request that Wtdta, you need to move. You need to move.
You can bring him.
I find my attention being drawn to the beautiful women sitting over here. And I feel like I'm ignoring the rest of the room because I keep finding my attention right here. My attention right here.
Let's have mine.
So I'm gonna request you guys, both of you, disperse and
that'll work.
Hide yourselves in the room somewhere else.
If you have any interest in the Civil War and all this is a debate, you just have to hear. Our address is P.O. Box 344, Tacoma, California, zip code 93444. That's P.O. Box 344.
How's our buddy at the radio station doing these days?
Looking forward to
He's got a dedication too.
I keep forgetting to tell you. Howard Griswold.
Gordon.
He said he was doing that.
He's the greatest.
We can back on the break. What I'd like to do is get maybe a minute or two, maybe 2 minutes, not to exceed the limit of your testimony. I'm just going to kind of interview you here, just so that the people on the radio can get a quick overview of the success you've had in the job. So we'll do that in about less than a minute when we come back, and 2 to 3 minutes. Basically what you said yesterday, but real condensed version.
Yeah, just like the one about with the police officers. Who are you?
Yes, yeah, that one. Okay. Yeah, but
because I told two stories.
No, that's the one I heard. That's one. Just condense it a bit. Just want to encourage you. Okay. You might as well don't go too far. We'll be right back. Sit over on the side.
You're better off over there anyway. The right-hand side is the power side. Notice he put Gordon on the left here, so.
All right, we're coming back, guys. Greetings and welcome back to Higher Ground Live. I'm your host, Pastor Massad. And I want to jump into something here, because one of the great things about what's happening here in Scottsdale, I've already said, is the people that are here, and we've had an opportunity to hear several different stories. And I want to introduce you to my new best friend, Brandy Stonecipher. Brandy, it was great hearing your testimony. And I want to, for the purpose of the radio audience, I just want you to give a quick 2-minute recap of it, because I thought it was fantastic.
Okay. Well, I got pulled over. The quick version is I got pulled over by an LA County sheriff. He walked up to the car, said the reason I pulled you over is because you didn't have any license plates on your car and the window tint is illegal. I need to see your license, registration, proof of insurance. I said, who are you? He looked at me like I was crazy. He said, I'm LA County Sheriff. I said, well, can I see some ID? And he said, this badge, this uniform, and that car is my ID. And I said, well, ordinarily that might be true, but lately there's been a lot of home invasion robberies, people dressed up like police officers. I'm going to need to see your photo ID, your business card, your badge number, and your public hazard bond information.
Now, a lot of people might think that you were a little crazy to talk to an armed police officer that way on the side of the road.
Well, I figure, all men are equal before and after the law, and if he wants to see my ID, I should be able to know who I'm doing business with.
That's very good, but I have to put a little disclaimer out here. Do not try this at home or in your home state.
We're talking about that in jest and laughing a little bit about it, but I want to sternly warn you, you don't belong doing that.
Yeah. You don't argue these cases on the side of the road.
Brandy was successful because, number one, his come from, believe it or not, was the right come from. And just because you try it doesn't mean it's going to be successful. And I'm warning you, don't do it. There's a lot of things going on that you need to understand before you take on such. It sounds like a simple process, but I'm going to tell you, leave the traffic stuff alone. So you keep the licenses for the straw man and a few other things. And what Brandy did and others do until you get some come from. And you'd have to picture, the man knew what he was talking about, and the policeman could feel him. Just saying the words isn't the same thing.
That's
Please.
Right. That's right.
And I'm not just kidding. Don't try this at home. Absolutely do not do this. There's better ways to do it, and Brandy wouldn't do it today. Is that not correct, Brandy?
Yeah, I don't recommend this for anybody, and I don't do it that way anymore.
One thing that our listeners have to realize, and probably most of the people in this room understand, is that there are a lot of people in jail over these little traffic issues. It parlays and it gets into some pretty hairy territory. Jack, you've seen that a lot through the years.
It's like television says. This was done by a professional in a professional setting, and don't try it at home unless you're similarly a professional, i.e. you know what you're doing and you're willing to deal with the consequences if this little theater develops in different directions.
And it can develop in all kinds of directions. And in your case, the police officer finally kind of shook his head and said, all right, have a good day?
Well, actually, I asked him to see all of those forms of ID, and he said, if you don't give me your driver's license and registration, I'm going to drag you out of that car and arrest you. So I conditionally accepted his offer. Upon payment of I conditionally accept your offer to be arrested upon payment of $1 million in cash and $100,000 for every hour of anticipated detention. And he said, I don't know what you're talking about. And I said, well, do you want a contract with me or not? And he said, I still don't know what you're talking about. And I said, well, maybe we should get a watch commander out here. And he says, I don't have a watch commander. And I said, well, let me make sure I've got this right. You're refusing to identify yourself, and now you're making false statements. And he said, why are you giving me such a hard time? And I said, well, didn't you pull me over? And he stood there for a few seconds, and he said, have a nice day, and left.
They don't always end that way. Sometimes a taser gets involved and all kinds of things can happen. So definitely it was a great victory. And I'm sure you were kind of pumped after you did it, but it is wise that you have evolved enough in the understanding that you know not to do anything like that today.
Well, I just decided that you can spend all your time fighting these little traffic things, or you can choose your battles, so to speak. We don't want to battle with anybody, but, pick and spend your time more efficiently and study and learn.
Absolutely. There's bigger fish to fry than traffic. All right. Thank you very much, Brandy. Gordon, I want to bring this back to you, and I think, who do we want to go to next? We want to continue with what we're doing. This is a live seminar. I want our listeners to understand that there's a reason you want to get a hold of this stuff. Remember, give Benton a call at 480-319-1552. 480-319-1552.
There's a lot of reasons you want to get a hold of this seminar. You want to understand what's going on. But we talked about it in the beginning. If everybody in the public thinks that just because they're not doing something wrong, they're going to be safe, then you sorely err. This is a democracy that dominates America and the world. That's communism. That's mobocracy. And in so doing, it's only a matter of time before something is turned on you or your children or somebody you know, and that's a fact.
That's very well put.
And this is not some scare tactic. It's what democracies do. In the 1928 training manual, military training manual, we give copies of that quote. Democracy's always in an anarchy. How do we know? Take a look at it. Things are getting more stressful. People are tripping worse. We got people in movie theaters killing people, shooting up congressmen, flying their airplanes into IRS buildings. This is insanity. This is stupidity at its highest form. It's a lack of empathy and understanding by these crazy people. And they're crazy because of a myriad of things. Where much is given as much is required. And I think, Father in heaven, where we have the world in America, and we have this fine government, it's a crying shame that we don't accept these government as the best, the perfect government, perfect being complete or whole, containing a republic and a democracy. But if you can have your cake and eat it too, your remedy, why wouldn't you think this is the greatest government since sliced bread? It is. And just because it turns its attention on you doesn't mean they don't like you or love you. It's just a game. Have a little fun. So what we're going to do is get rocking and rolling on this game. We want to give these people how to get your remedies, what you're going to need to do, and talk about mortgages and where the remedies are in those items also. We got lots of good stuff.
Pastor, I think one of the things that people really have to understand is that there's two attributes to all of us. There's our life and there's our living. Part of the problem is we perceive our life to be our body, which in the public is in the democracy. But that's not life, that's death, because the straw man is the so-called life in the democracy. And that's really a worship of death, because everything is done through your dead straw man. Likewise, everybody presumes their living in commerce takes place in the democracy, because that's where everybody tends to trade, buy, and sell. And we are starting to learn at this seminar that if your life and your living is in the democracy, you're in the world of the dead. You don't really have legal title to anything at all, so everything belongs to the government. And as our Vice President said a week or so ago, we're just slaves in some form of chains, but we can't even see the chains on our own arms and legs because we're totally unaware that we're living a life of death in the democracy through our straw man. And we're conducting our living by commerce with Federal Reserve notes, which are dead entities, and it gives us no legal title or true ownership for control in anything we do. We have to understand that we have to move our life back to the Republic, where we're treated as a living man or woman under God. We have to start understanding that we have to move our living or our commercial transactions back into the Republic, where we can use our asset account, so that whenever we buy and sell, we have legal title and control of the things that we're going after, so that we can truly be fiduciaries for God in what He provided on planet Earth. So everyone is so totally upside down now. They believe that life is death, and they believe that ownership is equivalent to wealth. And we got to understand that we've been trained into that by this military democracy, so that others will control our life.
Very well put. I've never
Actually, I don't know so much that we've been trained into it as we let it happen. We better take personal responsibility for these decisions. It's not somebody did this to us. This government's been warning us since who knows when, and we can go back to 1907 at the opening of the Jamestown Exposition with Theodore Roosevelt, where he said, "We of this mighty Western Republic have to grapple with the dangers that spring from popular self-government, tried on a scale incomparably vaster than ever before in the history of mankind, and from an abounding material prosperity greater also than anything which the world has hitherto seen." And this is more apropos today, this quote, than it was over 100 years ago. As regards the first set of dangers, it behooves us to remember that men can never escape being governed. Either they must govern themselves or submit to being governed by others. If from lawlessness or fickleness, from folly or self-indulgence, they refuse to govern themselves, then most assuredly, in the end, they will have to be governed from the outside. They can prevent the need of government from without only by showing they possess the power of government from within. A sovereign, that's us, authority, cannot make excuses for his failure. A sovereign must accept the responsibility for the exercise of power that inheres in him. And whereas is true in our republic, the people, that's us, are sovereign, then the people must show a sober understanding and a sane and steadfast purpose if they are to preserve that orderly liberty upon which, as a foundation, every republic must rest. I mean, every private side must rest.
You know, if you really want to understand how to master what Gordon is mastering, you have to understand how to memorize what Gordon has memorized. So really committed. We're going to a break. We're going to a break. I'm Pastor Massad. This is Higher Ground Live. Give us a call, 315-368-2252. We'll be right back for more live here from Scottsdale, Arizona, with Gordon Hall, Jack Smith, and Brandon Adams. Stay with us.
You know the exciting thing, ladies and gentlemen, you don't have to memorize this stuff. You just need the concept. You're going to govern yourself because you're the authority, or it will be done for you. Accept that. And you will either serve man or you will serve God. That's real simple concepts. Cause and effect rules the universe. There's nothing you need to memorize about James Allen. The aphorism, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he, not only embraces the whole of a man's being, but is so comprehensive as to reach out to every condition and circumstance of his life. A man is literally what he thinks, his character being the complete sum of all his thoughts. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the come from that Brandon and Jack speak of. Your character is the complete sum of all your thoughts, and cause and effect rules. You but merely need, your subconscious runs your world, not your conscious. You have the ability to program it. You either choose to get that come from right, because you can get the processes and the procedures down. That's going to come. The internal ones are those come from. And as we proceed to teach you how to obtain your remedy in credit cards, mortgages, all of those things, I mean contracts, If you will work on this come from, and we advocate, or at least I do, you need to read James Allen's 27 little pages, octavo size, 6x9, big print, once a week. It's about a 1 hour read. Well, I know what it says. I do too, and I love it and read it. And it's just those quotes in there over and over again are going to wash your brain clean of the stupid stuff that's sitting in there now.
That's right.
We all need this. It's not Brandon, I, Jack. We're all on this road to perfection and experience. What a gig. We have got the thing going in America. Jiminy Christmas. The world at our fingertips. Computers at our fingertips that we never dreamt of. Maps, and we can find restaurants. This is crazy society. This is the best thing I've ever seen. And what did Theodore? An abounding material prosperity greater also than anything that which the world has hitherto seen. That was 1907. This is 2012. Look at the prosperity.
Coming
and if
back,
we're gonna,
Gordon.
huh?
We're coming back.
We're back. We got one more 15-minute section, and we're going to get down to some fun business.
And we're back. I'm Pastor Massad. We're back live from Scottsdale, Arizona. Gordon, I want you to take us back into the seminar here. There's no reason that our listeners can't participate in some of this. What do you want to begin to teach? You, Jack, Brandon, where are you going?
Well, we're going to teach processes and a few other things, and I think Brandon is prepared to take over from here, and then Jack's going to follow up, and we're going to see where it goes.
Brandon, go ahead and teach. I may stop you once in a while just for the sake of the audience here on the radio, but
I think let's get the party started is what he's saying.
That's it.
Alrighty. Well, first thing, we've been talking over the weekend so far a lot about the process and the development of the process. And we've also discussed just now the importance and the significance of our way of being. The next thing that we're going into are principles. There are a set of principles that must be acknowledged in order for you to author a process. What do I mean by author a process? Own it.
Create it.
Create it. Author, like the word authority, you are the source. You are the source of it. We will be sharing various processes that we have authored. Yet without the principles in place, we would never have authored them. So we discussed a couple of principles yesterday. We had a little list there, our settle the account, perfect the title, and acquire possession. Those are principles of a process. What is a principle? It's a fundamental concept. It's intrinsic. So we here speak about the administrative process. And the administrative process has principles. So even though we may show you processes that we have authored, are they the quote-unquote silver bullet? Is Brandon's documents any more effective than anyone else's? Well, they may be. They may be, but only because there's a set of principles behind them. They're not just randomly thrown together words. And yes, you may use a template of someone's in order to author your process, but if you are not completely clear on the principles behind it, you can't own it. You can't stand behind it. You don't know what's really going on. So I think a better way of articulating... Any questions so far?
No, you're doing good.
Okay.
Very good.
A good way of articulating our principles. We talked about a step one. I don't know what happened to my blue pen. If you guys can find my blue pen back there, it'd be great. We talked about settling an account. And we'll also be talking about some other principles that, thank you, that actually mirror or go along with this. But elements of settling an account. We have the acquisition, the acquiring of an interest or a claim. What does that mean? Acquire an interest or claim.
You need something to stand on.
You need something to stand